We're grateful for who God is. That list of names given, holy and mighty and all of that, that's just the beginning of things. When Jesus was jousting with the Pharisees, Jesus made it clear to them that when you start talking about me, you're talking about something that surpasses Abraham. Because before Abraham was, he said, my name is I am. In other words, when you open up the book to look at all of the good things that a person can possibly be mighty and triumphant and awesome and holy, he says that that's just the beginning of it. He had to close the book.
Who I am, America. Who I am, America. I'm DJ D.O.C. Well, of course, that's not my real name. Real name, Carl Kincaid. Grew up in a household of two parents. I had one younger brother and, a younger sister. Coming up, raised in the church. Raised in the church, man, and my story is it's not, it might be different, then it might be similar to some other people. I didn't grow up in poverty. I had two parents that worked, two parents that cared for me, two parents that raised me up in the church. The Bible talks about train up a child in the way they should go. That way, when they're older, they won't depart from it. So coming up, growing up in the church, singing in the choir, at church Monday through Sunday, involved in the youth choir, youth activity, involved in sports. I played basketball, football, ran track. At one point in time, I was a Boy Scout. Whatever activity that you could name or whatever you could think of, I was involved in. Until my parents got a divorce in the 5th grade. And that's when things started to change. I started to struggle with identity. I didn't know who I was, but still being involved in sports and doing fairly well in school, I started to lose focus. And by the time I was in the 6th grade, grades started to drop. I started to have a lot of anger built up in me, not really knowing who I was. Wasn't hood enough for some of the black folk. It wasn't white enough for some of the white folk. So that caused me to really struggle with identity and who I was. So by the time the 7th grade hit, I got in my first fight. My first fight in the 7th grade. And I remember getting suspended from school. And when I came back to school after being suspended, I remember this feeling that I had of popularity. People started to accept. People started to like on me. I wasn't getting picked on anymore. I wasn't getting bullied anymore. So in the 7th grade, I started in a pattern of fighting. And even though I was in school, I would still do fairly well with my grade. I was still playing sports. It was still that crowd of friends that I was seeking acceptance from that led me going down the wrong path. 8th grade, still playing sports. 9th grade, I get into high school, still playing sports, but at this time, my dad moves across the country. I remember when he set us down and he told us that he was moving to Phoenix, Arizona. It crushed me. Not only was I struggling with identity due to the parents' divorce, but now my pops is leaving. You can imagine what that did to a kid. So even the anger that I had inside of me, it just increased. 9th grade, my dad moves to Arizona. I really didn't remember even crying when we left. I didn't even remember crying when we left. But sad to say, as I got older, I realized that it wasn't me being sad. The sadness that I had, I turned and internalized it, and it became even more anger. Now, even though I was angry on the inside, I was still popular as a kid because I played sports. I still did fairly well in grades. I was fairly, good at schoolwork, but I just began to get in more and more trouble. Hanging with the wrong people, being pulled one way, and just doing things that weren't a reflection on how I was raised as a youth. In the 9th grade, after my father left, I ended up dealing with feelings of anger. I ended up dealing with, the insecurity that I was having already. Him leaving made me feel rejected. Him leaving made me feel like he didn't want me. Me leaving felt like I didn't have no male role model in my life. But even though he left, my mom still did the best that she could. She wasn't working 2 jobs, but she worked 1 job all the time. She made sure that I had what I needed. She wasn't addicted to drugs. She wasn't out there in them streets. She wasn't in the hood. She just was a country girl from Hurtsboro, Alabama, that was raised up in church, that knew the right thing to do. My mom, she graduated from college, actually Knoxville College, back in, I don't know what year that was, back in 81, something like that. But she did the best that she could to raise me. In school, I remember being the popular guy. I remember doing stuff that I needed to do so that everybody would like me. And in turn, a lot of the stuff at times that people so-called like was stuff that was doing damage to me internally. Not really knowing that the habits that I was forming in school would lead to me going down a dark path. I remember being in school and so-called being the man on campus. I remember, being the basketball guy, being the football guy, and I remember just not being able to deal with anybody telling me about myself. And anytime somebody tried to tell me about myself, I would want to fight. I would get angry. I would get upset. But this is the stuff of me, in the absence of my father, how I would deal with things. I really didn't talk to anybody about the stuff that I was going through. I just thought that it was, as a man, you were supposed to not cry. I thought as a man that you were supposed to just keep your feelings in, keep your emotions in. So I started gravitate towards people who weren't necessarily doing the right thing. I remember I started smoking weed when I was 15 years old. Started smoking weed, started drinking, started partying, but all in the same time, being in school, it was like I was conflicted. It was like I had friends who were dropped out of school. I had friends that was living the street life. I had friends that was out there shooting people. I had friends that was out there robbing folks. But on the other side, I had friends also that was doing the right thing. I was conflicted. It was like how people say you got the angel on one side and the devil on the other. I was conflicted. I didn't know which one I wanted to be. I didn't know if I wanted to gravitate towards being a thug or if I wanted to gravitate towards being a schoolboy or a church boy. So what they did was I started to try to navigate both worlds. And what happened is it ended up turning me into somebody that I did not like. It ended up turning me into pretty much a chameleon, knowing how to adapt in certain situations. But one thing I can say, through my high school years, my mama always made sure that I had what I needed, that I went to class, and out of all my friends that was at school, I believe I was one of maybe a few to graduate high school. I went through the 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, 12th grade, playing sports. But the thing was, I would do barely enough It's like I wouldn't go all in my schoolwork because I wanted to hang out with the people in the street. And I didn't go all in the streets because I didn't want to be looked at as a failure. So I did barely enough to be able to graduate high school. I did barely enough. I didn't have straight A's, but I did do what I needed to do to graduate high school. But even though I graduated high school, one would think that my path would be straight and narrow from then. But what happened next, just have to wait to see.
Okay.
Who I am, America? DJ D.O.C. Government name, Carl Kincaid. Out of high school, I get accepted to a HBCU in Alabama, Alabama A&M University. But at the time, when I got accepted, I was excited. But the reality of it is, my work ethic has not changed. The same work ethic that I had in high school, wanting to barely do enough, having a foot in the streets and having a foot in school or in church, I was still walking out. I was still conflicted of what I wanted to do. And my advice to people is, when you do something, you gotta be all in. You can't straddle the fence. So what ended up happening, I ended up going to college. I went to A&M. But at the same time, when I'm in college, I get into partying. And at this time, you know, I was rolling with my cousins and some friends real tough, and ended up really getting really active in a gang. I ended up joining the Pyrus and being real active in the Pyrus. So here I am again, wanting to be in the streets, but wanting to be a school and a church boy at the same time. But I felt like I had something to prove. I felt like coming up, me not being good enough, or me not being black enough, or me not being white enough, I felt like I had something to prove. So that led to me gravitating more towards the game than my college friends. I ended up wanting to be accepted in the gang so bad that I started doing things that I knew at one point would either get me dead or locked up. I started robbing folks. I started carrying guns and toting guns and shooting at people. I started doing stuff that was totally outside of my character. Stuff that was totally outside the way my mama and my daddy raised me to be. I started going down this slope and just started digging myself deeper and deeper hole into crime and into the gang life. And just like how I had my first fight, the more acceptance that I got, the more stuff that I would do that would lead me down a very dark path. So by the time I'm 20, 21, I'm fully active gang member, a part of the Pyru. And there wasn't nothing that I wouldn't do to represent or to get status within the gang. My bad, I paused for a second.
No
within
problem.
the gang.
Yeah, go ahead.
So what that led to me is I started first time going to jail. I was walking down the street from a friend's house. The police saw me. They had some thefts in the area, and I was walking down the street with a sawed-off shotgun in my pants. The police pulled over, checked me, searched me, found a gun on me, and that started the roller coaster of incarceration. So at that time, first time incarcerated, you bail out. And at that time, I thought it was okay. I thought it was just a little slap in the wrist. So I started to do more and more things that would lead me closer to prison. So I was still conflicted. I was working a job, but I wanted to be in the street. I was going to school, but I wanted to be in the street, which eventually led to me dropping out of school the second year and working a job here and there, little grocery stores or little warehouses. Couldn't hold down the job because I wanted to be in the hood, you know, addicted to weed, and at this time doing cocaine, doing pills, uh, just living a full-fledged street life. But there was always something in the back of my mind that was calling me to stop. So I ended up in Alabama. I ended up leaving and moving back to Knoxville in 2006. I ended up moving in with my mom, you know, to try to, you know, be somewhere where somebody loved me. Because the time that I was in Alabama, I felt alone. Even in the midst of having all these friends, even in the midst of being part of a gang, I felt alone. So I moved home to be where people truly love you. If you have family, if you have a mom and a dad, cherish them. Because at the end of the day, family are going to be the ones that'll be there. They'll be the ones that'll be there through thick and thin. So I moved back home in 06. 06, get a job, working, but I'm still in and out the street. So I ended up one day catching a robbery charge. I caught somebody at the gas station and attempted to rob me. I didn't get anything, and we fled, but they ended up putting a warrant out for my arrest for aggravated robbery. So at the time, really coming through school, not having a good work ethic, not taking care of business, doing this stuff that is manipulative and just getting in the pattern of, you know, not handling business, caused me to go on the run. I went on the run from the police from 2006 to 2008. While between 2006 and 2008, still just trying to live a double life. Calling myself, you know, being in the streets 1 minute and trying to go to church and be in church the next minute. But one thing that I can say is through this time, it's like I started to hear God's voice. It's like something was pulling me. And it's just at the time, hanging out and doing drugs and robbing people, you know, at the time, it just didn't feel right anymore. And all I could do was just remember the things that I was taught growing up in church. The things that, you know, we was taught, the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not kill. And when I look at it, I'm doing the very things that go against God and what his word says to do. So in 2008, I ended up getting caught. They ended up catching me. I went to jail for 2 months while fighting this case, and they put it off. They put the case off, the court date off 2 times, and the third time that I went to court, the witness didn't show up, so they dropped the charge. But the thing about it is, I played that role in jail, like I was Mr. Christian. I played that role in jail that, yeah, I'm gonna live for the Lord. Lord, if you just drop this charge, I promise I'm gonna live for you. I played that role like a lot of us do. But God gave me grace and he gave me mercy. And he dropped the charge and he let me go, hoping with the hopes of that I would do right. I get out. No more than a year later in 2009, I catch another robbery charge. But before I catch the robbery charge, it's like I'm trying to inch closer and closer to God. It's like I know this stuff that's happening is not cool. I'm seeing people that I know, you know, get killed. I'm seeing people that I know go to prison for a very long time. And I know what I'm doing is not right and it's not pleasing to God. So it was a war going on in my mind. So in 2009, I was facing an eviction. So instead of me working and earning money, like most citizens do, because of a drug addiction, because being addicted to drugs, uh, I would spend the money that I got very quickly and just go out and rob somebody else or try to come up with a quick scheme to get more money. Well, what that led to me doing is in 2009, going and robbing somebody at a gas station. But see, this robbery was a little bit different because before I did it, I was playing worship music in my car. I was going to church on a regular. I was trying to do the things that God wanted me to do. It's just the pull of the enemy was just so strong. And I remember catching a robbery charge in 2009 that resulted in me going to prison. I went to prison for an aggravated robbery and ended up doing 2.5 years on an 8-year sentence. And what happened next? Gotta wait and see. Who I am, America? DJ D.O.C, also known as Carl King. But where I am today, God has completely transformed my life. When I got out of prison in 2015, man, I just started to live for Him. I told God that I wanted to surrender it all. And so when I got out of prison, just ended up living for Him, getting in the Word, seeking Him, doing things His way. I ended up getting a job. I had my own car. Of course, I had a license. Out of prison, I ended up getting married in 2016. I have a 11-year-old little girl, and also since being out, I've had a 3-year-old little girl, and also just had a little boy. And God has completely transformed my life from where I used to be to where I am now. Understanding that who I am, the things that I used to struggle with in my identity, I didn't know who I was. But since living for God and being saved and walking in the Word, He shows us who we are in Him. The Bible talks about, for He made Him to be sin for us who knew no sin, that we might become the righteousness of God in Him. So understanding that we are the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus, and understanding that He cares for you. I'm talking about He's blessed me. It's been a promotion after promotion. I remember, when I got my job, I ended up being promoted to assistant manager within a month, and then within a year being a manager of a store. We're talking about somebody who was just in prison for an aggravated robbery is a manager of a rent-to-own store, dealing with money, dealing with checks, and doing audit and stuff like that. Just God totally overriding every natural circumstance. And I promise you, if you put Him first, you'll see what He can do in your life. Going on from being at a rent-to-own store to obtaining my own show. I'm a Christian DJ, and I go by the name of DJ D.O.C, which stands for Dependent on Christ. He ended up giving me a radio show in 2019. It's called Jesus Beats for the Street. It comes on Sunday at 1 p.m. Me and my wife have bought a house. I'm working a job now that is quadruple times in pay of the job that I had when I first got out of prison. I'm over the evangelism team at my church. Me and my wife do ministry together. We feed the homeless. We just do all sorts of outreach, man, and just giving back to the community. It's one thing to talk about, and it's one thing to have the jailhouse religion. But one thing I encourage brothers to do is to, when you get out, to really seek God, to really give Him your all, to really do things and live life like He wants you to live. And I promise you, you'll see what He can do. I'm a living testimony. I went from being an insecure little boy to, through adolescence, to fighting, to being addicted to drugs, to joining a gang, to going to prison, to getting out of prison. And God has totally transformed my life. I can't say it enough. Give your life to Christ, man. I promise you, you'll see what he can do. And it's not even just about what he can do for you, but it's about honoring him and being grateful for the things that he's done for us, for loving us so much that he sent his son to die on the cross for our sins, that we could never repay him. But understanding that he loved us so much that he wanted to be in fellowship, wants us to be in fellowship with him. So just since then, man, it's been a lot going on. Being able to be a family man, DJ, minister, evangelist, husband, just God has just really turned my life around. And I owe all the glory, all the honor, and all the praise goes to him. So I encourage, if there's a young brother out there right now who's going through it, who you feel alone, you feel like there's no hope in sight, you feel like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you, God cares about you. The Bible says to cast your cares upon him, for he cares for you. I promise you, don't give up. Don't give up hope. Lean on God's everlasting arm. You hear me? Just do, what you got to do to glorify him in everything that you do. And I promise you, you'll start to see a change. So that's my story. DJ D.O.C. Be blessed. In Jesus' name.
We're grateful for who God is. That list of names given, holy and mighty and all of that, that's just the beginning of things. When Jesus was jousting with the Pharisees, Jesus made it clear to them that when you start talking about me, you're talking about something that surpasses Abraham. Because before Abraham was, he said, my name is I am. In other words, when you open up the book to look at all of the good things that a person can possibly be mighty and triumphant and awesome and holy, he says that that's just the beginning of it. He had to close the book when trying to describe himself and just said, I am. Start your roll of names of all the things I am. That's just the beginning. There is no single word that encompasses all that God is. That's why when you are on his side, when you make a commitment to him, you can't possibly lose. Because